Now, Gut Feelings is a community art and science project that is really a community outreach project exploring the vital connection between our gut, our environment, and our mental well-being through an imaginative fusion of science and art. And you can see some of that around the room this evening. This project's been built on the existing Gut Feelings project, a collaboration between the Southern Adelaide Local Health Network, the Arts in Health team, the dietetics team, and Flinders University researchers, and extended this work into local communities through public creative engagement through this latest round. I'm sure this evening you will hear more about this work of the earlier Gut Feelings project, as well as a little bit more about the journey that we've been on in the last few weeks. So this latest initiative delivered a series of free community art workshops in local community centres, local libraries across the region, and participants were immersed in the latest science on gut and local soil microbiomes, the microscopic ecosystems that profoundly impact our mental health, immunity, and resilience. Participants created artworks in response through creative workshops led by some incredible local artists, translating complex science into accessible hands-on learning experiences. By combining scientific knowledge and creative expression, this project invited community members to connect with the science of microbiomes and its growing significance in mental health. It encouraged curiosity, dialogue, and reflection, and used art to demystify and humanize science, aligning with growing interest in holistic health, creative expression, and nature-based well-being. As you can see around the room today is the culmination of our 4 key workshops, 2 of which were led by Laura Wills, who joins us this evening, and fantastically titled, in my opinion. One was called Cooked and the other Happy Meal. So these creative workshops at Seaford Library, as well as Wakefield House Positive Ageing Centre, really investigated the relationship between gut, brain, and mental well-being. And Laura, as you can see around the room this evening, guided participants through fun collaging and drawing techniques to create individual and collaborative artworks. Furthermore, we had the Little Garden Makers workshop run by Zoe Brooks, who joins us this evening, as well as Liz Saunders, who's on the panel. And this workshop held at Aldinga Community Centre supported really rich conversations around the importance of local food ecosystems for improving health and community connection, including the gut health benefits of growing your own food. And I'm sure many of you in the room are busily working in kind of community gardens or in your own veg patches, creating your own tasty food. Creative minds were flowing during the project as participants painted concrete pumpkin sculptures cast from real pumpkins actually grown from the Good Bank Garden in McLaren Vale, and you can see some of those on show this evening. Finally, we had junk food. This workshop held at Aberfoyle Community Centre with a large group of young people at the centre sparked conversation about our connection to what we eat and our gut health, using food with little to no nutritional value to paint a large collaborative painting, which you can see on the wall this evening. Some of you, many of you may have been on this journey with us and may have been involved in some of these workshops. So it's great to have you back in the room if you were. If you haven't had a chance to have a look at all the different workshop pieces and artworks, I would really encourage you to take a moment after the forum just to have a look and have a chat to some of the artists as well. Just want to take this moment to thank Zoe, Laura, and Liz, who were a part of the workshops in helping guide participants to create these wonderful expressions, but also through the discussions that which were had during the workshops. Before we get the public forum underway, I just wanted to take a moment to thank the partners that have been involved in this project. Along with the City of Onkaparinga, we teamed up with the Southern Adelaide Local Health Network and the Arts in Health team, led by Trish Hansen, who joins us on the forum this evening. We have Jake Robinson and the team at the Flinders University a part of this project. And thanks to Inspiring Australia funding, who enabled the continuation of some of the early work by the Arts in Health team and Flinders University to continue this project through the gut feelings. Now on to the public forum. So all of this work over the last few weeks has been leading to this gut feelings public forum. It brings together scientific and creative voices to communicate how soil, environmental and gut microbiomes affect well-being, mood and mental health. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Trish Hansen, who will be leading tonight's forum. Over to you, Trish.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Is that better with the mic? Yes. Yeah, terrific. I'm going to start by asking our panellists to introduce themselves. So I'm Trish. I'm based at Flinders Medical Centre as part of the Southern Adelaide Local Health Network team. And I'd like each of you to just tell us who you are.
My name's Ben Ryan. My claim to fame is that I've been married nearly 30 years and I have 3 adult boys.
Hi everyone. Thank you for your acknowledgement, Paul. I'm Laura Wills, a local visual artist living on Garniota with my partner Will and twin 12-year-old boys. I have a visual arts practice and an ecology of practice, and I have a sort of a shifting methodology of working that includes care and collaboration and relationships.
Hi, I'm Jake Robinson. I'm an academic at Flinders University. I'm a microbial ecologist and also a restoration ecologist. So the first part means I study microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, viruses, etc. in the environment and how they influence human health, but in beneficial ways. And then the second part means I develop ways to restore damaged and degraded ecosystems. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Liz Sanders and I'm delighted to be here with you on Garniota. My background is in food. I've loved food forever, as we all have, I think. And I have a background beginning in dietetics and then working into public health and community nutrition, working at Flinders, and now I run a social enterprise called the Food Embassy.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open this evening's conversation with a little story. It's an unpublished children's story, and I hope you enjoy it. It's called Little Beings. Flora lived with her family in a small old house. The small old house lived in a big, even older tree. The big old tree lived in an enormous, even older, ancient rainforest. Every day on her way to school, Flora would warble, woggle, wiggle, gargle, to the rowdy magpies. Good morning, she would whisper to the soft green moss. But it was the teeniest, weeniest underground beings that fascinated Flora the most. It was the millions of billions of incy-wincy microbes that lived in the soil, creatures too small for Flora to see. Nice to not see you, little beings, she said one day as she gently scooped up some soil into a jar. We're going to school today. When it was Flora's turn for show and share, she held up the jar of soil. What's that? Said a voice from somewhere in the class. Is that dirt? It's much more than dirt, she explained. It's wild rainforest soil. Did you know that there are millions of billions of itty-bitty microbes living in here? Creatures too small to see, but so mighty that they help keep the entire rainforest healthy. Then came a sound from the back of the room. A noise had accidentally escaped from someone's bottom. Some children laughed, others held their noses. Stop, Flora shouted. It's much more than smells. Farts are the voices of microbes talking, she explained. because you are not you. Well, at least not entirely. More than half of you is microbes. And while you can't see them, there are millions of billions of microbes in your gut that help keep you healthy. And it's their voices we hear when a fart comes out. Do they like cake? Asked another voice from somewhere in the class. Cakes are fine sometimes, but they like veggies best. And while treats are tasty, too many are ghastly. When they feel bad, we feel sad, explained Flora. Another voice came from the back of the class. But, well, what are they saying to us through our farts? Flora stood for a moment and took a deep breath. She needed to think. She scratched her head. Well, said Flora, staring at the microbes in the soil in the jar, I wonder. Thank you. So it's with that wonder that we're going to go on an enchanting and informative journey tonight. And I'm going to invite Jake Robinson to get us started. Can you... Sean, we might need another mic or two.
See if this tricky thing works. Oh. It works. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about our invisible friends today and the soil, gut and mind connection. I like to use this phrase, all the nature we can see intimately depends upon all the nature we can't see. And what I mean by that is, as you can see my beautiful artwork there, rivaling you guys, I think. So when we look at nature in general, we see things like animals, plants, soils, etc. But if we had these kind of space-age goggles on that we're able to see in the invisible world, this is something that we would probably see, something like this. So microbes are absolutely everywhere, omnipresent, all over animals and plants, in the soils, inside our bodies. But actually, probably the least accurate part of this image is the big empty space in the middle, which is the air. So microbes are all over the air as well. So we breathe in trillions of these microbes every day. So actually, a more representative reality would be something like this. They're absolutely everywhere, microbes. Okay, so let's meet some microorganisms. I'm going to throw things at people now, but I need these back at the end. So we have bacteria. They don't hurt. And this one's a naughty one, actually. Pseudomonas, naughty. Oh well. We have viruses as well. Yes. More bacteria. And we have fungi as well. So many people think of fungi, the mushrooms or the fruiting bodies you see in a forest or the grocery shop. But actually many, if not most, are invisible or near invisible. At least their parts are. And we have algae as well. Algae are in soils as well. So algae play key roles in soil aggregation, so keeping soil particles together. It's really important to prevent soil erosion. Protozoa as well. So these are the first animal-like organisms. So you can think of proto as first or prototype, and zoa refers to animal, so first animal-like things. And they're actually predators in the soil ecosystem. And so are viruses. So we all know what viruses are. We've lived through pandemics. Some of them cause diseases, but many of them are really beneficial in keeping bacteria in check. So the same kind of predator-prey dynamics that we see in the visible world also occur in the invisible world. So everybody sat here right now has 380 trillion viruses inside them at any given moment. But they're probably playing key roles in keeping you healthy. So we have all sorts of different microbes living in soils and living in your bodies, all different shapes and sizes. The top one is one of those viruses, someone caught it over there. It's called a bacteriophage, and this actually hunts down bacteria and kind of inoculates its genetic material into it so it can proliferate. At the top right is a tardigrade. You've probably seen those before. Some people find them cute, also known as moss piglet or water bear. They're found in lichens and mosses, so you'll find them on soils, probably not in your bodies, but you never know. The one in the middle is called a Geobacter bacterium, and this lives deep down in the mud in anaerobic conditions, so where there's not much oxygen. And this can generate its own electricity. So when we say we invented or discovered electricity, actually microbes have been doing it for millions and millions of years. And this is just a quick note on the size difference of microbes. I think we kind of standardize or normalize the size of microorganisms. We think, yeah, they're all really tiny, but there's very different sizes. So this speck on the screen represents a virus, and this one represents a bacterium. And actually, the largest bacterium is 37,500 times bigger than the smallest virus. And that sounds quite big. How do you contextualize that? Well, let's contextualize it. So that's exactly the same as comparing a single poppy seed on top of a muffin with a blue whale. So the size difference of these things just in the invisible world is absolutely enormous. And this is all the organisms that a blue whale, same size as a blue whale. So what are soils? So we're here to talk about soils a little bit as well. So soils are the foundations of terrestrial life. They are kind of conglomerates of what we call abiotic, so non-living things and living things as well. So they form this kind of dynamic ecosystem. And importantly, they are inherently relational. So it's not this kind of inert material. There's trillions of species in there, and they're all interacting with each other. So there's lots of different kind of relationships going on in the invisible world beneath our feet. Are soils alive? Healthy soils are very much alive. So up to 99.9% of the planet's species live in soil ecosystems. This is the latest estimate, which has increased from 60-odd% a few years ago. And as you can see on the right, pie charts, most of those species are bacteria. So we have lots of different species living in soils and your body. And now I'm just going to talk quickly about the functional roles that they play. So they have specific genes, so bits of DNA that encode for various functions that allow ecosystems to work, basically. So microbes in the soil, they contribute to nutrient cycling and making nutrients available for plants. I mentioned they play a key role in soil structure, disease suppression as well. So certain species cause diseases, but many of them actually keep diseases in check, and they're important in plants' immune systems. Phytohormones, so they pump out chemicals that keep plants healthy. And importantly, we should think about plants in relation to our health, because most of the things we eat come from plants, even if it's the things that that eat the plants even. And then there's lots of symbiotic relationships going on in soils as well. So these microorganisms, these little communities, these little, as Trish said, rainforests of microbes underneath the soil, they play a key role in plant health, plant development, productivity, and also what we call micronutrient or phytochemical content. So the actual nutrient quality of those food plants that we eat is somewhat determined by this ecosystem of microorganisms in the ground. And that's why we need to really pay attention to soil and restore soil and keep soils healthy. Who considers themselves to be independent? Put your hand up. Anyone? Nobody. Two people. Two people are independent. Well, humans are literally incapable of doing anything by themselves. So we all depend on the trillions of microorganisms that live inside and on our bodies. So we have distinct microbiomes in our armpits, in our nose, in our guts, in our everything. Distinct microbial communities. And again, they have these genes that play important roles, functional roles in keeping us alive and healthy. So actually, we all depend on the 100 trillion bacteria that live inside our bodies. This is bacteria. I mentioned earlier that there are also 380 trillion viruses inside you as well. They play a key role too. So we have all of these living inside and on you at any given moment. So you're essentially a walking ecosystem of life. So we really shouldn't be viewing humans as this kind of individual entity. You are a community of life. Some snappy statistics. So in terms of your microbiome, you have 1.3 times more microbes in your body than your own human cells. The genes in your microbiome outnumber your own genes by 150 to 1. And if you could extract the microbes from just one single person's body and line them up, they would be able to wrap around the Earth 2.5 times. This is from one single person's body. Mind-blowing, isn't it? So you're this walking, talking ecosystem, what we call a holobiont, or a meta-organism. A host plus trillions of microbes that work symbiotically to form a functioning ecological unit. And everyone here kind of emits your own microbial cloud, signature microbial cloud, around 1 million biological particles every single hour, kind of floating away from your body. And we can view plants and food plants in much the same way. So plants are also holobionts. So they're also an ecosystem within themselves. It's not just like the thing that you see. They're also a host plus trillions of microorganisms. This is a bit more complicated, but it's just the idea of there are food webs within food webs, or what we call nested food webs. So I published this last year. It's the idea that we have the traditional ecological food web in the red ellipse on the left there. So we have primary producers, or the plants, and then we have the herbivores that feed on those, the predators that feed on those, and they form these kind of complex chains of trophic interactions. If you zoom into one of those nodes, that's a population of a given species. In this case, it's a rabbit, but it could be a broccoli, or it could be yourself. It doesn't really matter. There's any species within that population. And then if you zoom into one of those nodes, so that's an individual within a population, what you find is you have a microscopic food web inside of you, inside a broccoli, inside a rabbit, whatever. And the dynamics, so the microbial interactions within that invisible food web, plays a key role in shaping the health and the behavior of the individual. So it actually has an effect on the trophic dynamics at the macro level. That is to say, there's lots of things going on, and these invisible food webs, where the predator-prey dynamics occur, play a key role in the health of those plants and your bodies. So we are colonized by microbes. I don't really like the word colonized, but that's the scientific term here, by microbes from the environment, including our food, which is essentially seeded also by the microbes from the soils. My friend John Cryan likes to say, you are what your microbes eat rather than you are what you eat. So the idea is you've really got to feed your microbes rather than yourself, your individual self. It's feeding that community of life inside your body. So we talk about probiotics and prebiotics quite a lot. So the probiotics are essentially the foods that contain those beneficial microorganisms that, when consumed in consistent amounts and large enough amounts, then have a beneficial effect on your body. So things like fermented foods like tempeh and yogurts, etc. And then the prebiotics are the things that those probiotic bacteria feed on. So you need to feed those probiotic bacteria with diverse fruits and veg, essentially, providing them with a diverse range of nutrients to keep that community healthy. And every different food, every individual food has its own microbiome. We call it the edible microbiome. So, here's 4 examples of a tomato versus spinach versus fig versus olives. And the pie charts just essentially show the community makeup of those microbes. Just the different colours means there are different species or genera living in those foods. So it's really important to have a diverse range of foods because they all contain individual communities of microbes. And that's really beneficial for our bodies. Then we have this idea of the gut-brain axis. So it's a two-way communication system that links our central nervous system to our gastrointestinal system, or our gut. And there's crosstalk between the brain and the gut and the brain. And around 70-80% of the crosstalk goes from the brain to the gut. And then 20 to 30% comes from the gut to the brain. Have you ever felt when you're stressed or anxious and your gut feels really unsettled? That's definitely one of the first signs for me. Oh God, I'm anxious. That's a manifestation of that gut-brain axis, that communication system. But we've gone one step further now, and we call it the microbiota gut-brain axis, because part of that crosstalk, part of that communication between the gut and the brain involves those microbes that live in your gut. So they can actually communicate with your brain by sending out various metabolites or certain chemicals that tinker with what's called the vagus nerve. So that's a large cranial nerve that links your brain to the various body organs in your body. So the microbes are actually talking to your brain as well. And then we know now that there are various foods, it kind of might seem quite obvious, but there's various foods that promote favourable mental health. As I've mentioned, some of those probiotics and prebiotic kind of foods. And then there are certain foods like ultra-processed foods, sweets and chocolates and crisps and cake and all that stuff, that demote favourable mental health, essentially, via this gut-brain axis. So the idea is you've got to feed those microbes in order to influence your mental health in beneficial ways. So you're feeding that zoo or that garden of microbes in your gut. And the research is very early days, so there's lots to find out still. There's also a really important reason to have a diverse microbiome in your gut, and that's through the immune system. So a higher microbial diversity in your gut correlates with a higher colonization resistance to opportunistic pathogens. So basically, if you've got a nice diverse ecosystem inside you, those well-established species are more likely to boot out any opportunistic pathogens that try and invade your body. And there's various other immunological pathways, which I'm going to talk about after. We started this consortium called the Grounded Minds Consortium. So essentially, we are researching officially that link between soil health, food plant health, gut health, and brain health. So there's lots of research to do on that. Because some of these links seem obvious to some people, but we just don't have the science to back our narrative up yet. So that's why we're doing this research. I probably might skip ahead unless, are we running out of time? Yeah, I'll skip ahead. So I can talk about this particular species of microbes that also have been shown to influence mental health in various ways. People have done like brainwave analysis and all that kind of stuff, but I'll probably leave it there for now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jake. Incredible. And perhaps we'll come back to some of those slides in questions. So, speaking of food, I'm very pleased to introduce Liz Sanders, a dietitian and also a leader of the social enterprise, the Food Embassy.
Thanks, you, Trish. Well, I'm going to reinforce a lot of what Jake has just said. As we talk about food, glorious food, we're all connected with food in some way. We need to eat 3 times a day to survive, but it also provides us with a lot more than just nourishment. It's a way of connecting, but also of thinking about where we get our food from. So I'm just going to take you on a bit of a journey in that, but let's get this working first. Okay, just to reinforce some of the stuff that Jake had just talked about, just a few interesting facts. Thinking about, you have more microbes in your gut than stars in the Milky Way. The gut microbe weighs roughly the same as your brain. The diverse diet equals a diverse gut, which will equal better health, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Jake mentioned that gut-brain, the chat that happens there, that information highway via the vagus nerve, and the important role that the gut bacteria play in metabolising key neurotransmitters such as serotonin. I'm sure we've all heard about the wonders of serotonin for mental health. So it's an incredible connection, what happens in our gut with what happens in our brain. Often talked about as the second brain, or some would even argue the first brain, the one that we should focus on most. So that important point about feeding your gut. So we just talked on this, the prebiotics idea, that fibres, these are fibres that your body can't digest. So they're the ones that the microbes love. So these are things like the onions, the garlic, the whole grains, the legumes. They're the things we need lots of. Lots of different diversity in that space is the key message there. The other one is called resistant starch, which is another type of fibre and found in cooked potato. So anyone who likes potato salad, it's a goer. Called pasta, and unripe bananas are another food source that's rich in resistant starch. So the idea here is to get lots of different types of fibre that will feed those good bugs and build a strong gut. And then we want to help our gut. So this is the probiotics. So these are the live helpers. They support digestion and gut balance. So we've got some of them up the back tonight, actually, thanks to Gut Feeling. There is some amazing kombucha. We've got things like yogurt and kefir and kimchi, miso, all those fermented products, important to have some of those. So the blend of two, the pro and the pre, is really important for your gut health. And the other key message there is diversity, ensuring that you're getting lots of diverse food. There is this notion about having 30 different foods in a week, or even I say in a day, and people get freaked out by that, like how can you possibly have that? But if you added up all the spices, or the ginger, the garlic, or that, it's quite amazing how many different foods. And then the other thing in that is colour, thinking about colour. I was just sharing before this about my 14-year-old who smartly came home the other day and saying, "Look, Mum, look what I've got. I got all my colours," and it was a packet of rainbow-coloured lollies. Telling the dietetic mum that he'd achieved his colours, but no, not the ideal, because as what upsets your gut. And that is the UPFs, which is ultra-processed food. As Zoe was talking a little bit to me before about her workshop with junk food, and the really interesting thing there about the emotional connection that these young people had to ultra-processed food. It is so easily available to us all. It's the first thing we see as we walk into the supermarkets. You're trying to buy, good healthy choices for your kids. It's really challenging. These are the foods that are high in those refined carbs, sugar and salt and fat. And alongside that is all this new research, particularly around food additives and emulsifiers and what damage they're actually causing to your gut and your gut lining particularly, and how that can disrupt it. So this can get a little overwhelming for everyone. There's all those numbers in the back of the products of these foods. How do we possibly, navigate that? What I'd say to people is you can go onto the website, for SANS is one, Food Standards Australia, that has a list of all those additives and emulsifiers. But the message here is really just try to minimise as much as you can. In our modern day world, you you will all have cupboards filled with emulsifiers. I can guarantee you they will be in a lot of your products. So it's challenging, and this is what we're up against really in our modern food system, how we combat against that. Which brings me now to, I'm not doing well here. Before I move on to that, the key thing that research is showing, and Mood and Food Centre at Deakin Uni in Victoria is one to look out for if you're really interested in this space. They're doing amazing work. The work that Felice Jack has done over there has proven quite strongly around diet and mental health, and particularly aligning to the Mediterranean diet as the kind of gold standard in a sense, which is a diet that's rich in vegetables, bit of fruit, lots of lean meat, nuts, legumes, olive oil, are the foods that we should be eating regularly. But if we are going to think about what we're going to eat, we need to think about where it comes from. And this is my work today. So I'm no longer practicing as a dietitian, but I work with the Food Embassy as a social enterprise, and we're all about food systems. I'm working with wonderful people like Ben Ryan, who will follow from me, about thinking about where our food comes from. So this is the critical piece. The whole notion that the nutrient density of the food that we eat is dependent on the nutrient richness and regenerative soils that food is grown in. There is a lot happening in this space, and there's particular research going on, and Jake might know of this, of getting meters where you'll be able to get to a space where we can actually scan our food to know what the nutrient density is of that food. So that work there's a lot happening in that space. Looking at the research around the microbial content in the soil and how that affects our human biome. So I think this field is going to change dramatically. It already has in the last 5 years, but in that we need to be supporting regenerative farmers that really care for their soil, know their soil. Ben is one on the panel tonight, but this picture is here of Kari. She's at Common Acre, just down the road. It was the old Village Greens site. And now she's running a community-supported agriculture there, where you can get a box from her. Her vegetables will last weeks and weeks and weeks. The soil there is incredible, and you will then taste the difference in that. So the work I now do is with the Hills and Fleurieu Local Food Futures project. This is our range of partners down the bottom. We are all about how we can support a thriving, regenerative local food system. And if in that, we try to identify projects and opportunities to make that much more resilient. So our key vision is more local food to local people in a way that is fair for all people and planet. So that means that we acknowledge and value everything. In our modern day world, we don't really value too much in the modern day world around our food. Food has got so cheap, it really doesn't reflect the real cost of food, and we're certainly not paying our farmers adequately for the way that they grow, particularly growing good food. So on that note, I'm going to just finish with a quote. This is from Michael Pollan, one of my food activists, people that I always look to, and he talks about eating food, not much, but mostly plants. And I would argue as well, thinking about where your food is grown and how it is grown.
Thank you, Liz. I think I keep muting myself. Thank you. That was really interesting, Liz. There's a lot of information here. So as we're talking, please think about some questions that you'd like to ask the panel once we get to that stage. So we'll have time for questions and conversations. So over to you, Ben. You've spent your life thinking about this deeply.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, I got nothing to say while I sit down, so I've got to stand up and hopefully something will come. I've been really fortunate to live on the land for nearly 60 years. It is a privilege, and it's one that I don't take lightly. And it was in about 1990, after I'd studied agriculture at Roseworthy, and in the 80s it was the time when chemicals were going to solve all of the world's problems. When Dad was at Roseworthy in the 60s, that's when they were shooting Clydesdales, draft horses, and replacing with tractors. So it was only 20 or 30 years later that the chemicals were going to solve all the world's problems. And I got caught up in that. You know, we went through a stage of the high input agriculture, using a lot of fertiliser and a lot of chemicals because, insects were going to wipe us out and we needed, it's la 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 la. Anyway, by about 1990, this started worrying me. So it was only 4 or 5 years into my agricultural career. But I didn't know what to do about it. At the time, nobody was talking about it. Everybody was talking about killing stuff. And modern agriculture and modern living is about killing things. I got a weed in my lawn, better kill it. I got something eating in my vegetables, better kill it. We don't talk about why. Same with our own health. We feel sick, we go to the doctor because we want something to stop us feeling sick. We don't worry about why we're feeling sick. And so it was this sort of attitude that by the early 2000s, it was really concerning me that we had probably gone down the wrong track, not just us, but the whole agricultural and probably human system, in thinking that we're going to solve all of our problems by killing stuff. Amongst that, I've also had a lifetime of depression, at times very severe. At the worst, I was lying on the floor in the bedroom in the fetal position, just rocking. And our children were small. Julianne had to explain to the kids why Dad was doing what he was doing. So that led me to a number of counsellors, therapists, people who helped me through this journey in my own rebuilding. But they also opened my eyes to an alternative way of thinking. So instead of in agriculture looking to kill stuff, instead of in our own human health going to get something to cure a symptom, I started thinking more about the cause. But even in the early 2000s, there were not many people thinking in this way. So most of what we did on the farm, you could put up the next slide, please. I don't have a clicker because I wasn't smart enough to do it that way. So this is where we are, right at the bottom of the Fleur Peninsula. Our farm's tucked in amongst the Deep Creek Conservation Park. So, we are blessed. So I got sidetracked. So these people with the alternative views helped me to build an alternative view about how our food production should be. But it took a long time of trialling things. I won't say we failed with a lot of things, but a lot of things didn't work, but they were learning experiences, learning opportunities. Now you can go onto the internet and there'll be YouTube videos of people doing all sorts of fun stuff. But when we started this journey, we were really just making it up as we went along. We didn't realise what that meant until about 5 years ago we had the opportunity to lease the farm next door to us. And it had been run conventionally for ever. And I asked the fellow whose farm it was, which paddocks had he not sprayed? And he said the lawn. So basically the whole farm got sprayed for weeds and insects every year. And within about 2 years, we'd converted that into basically an organic farm. So we didn't have insect problems anymore, we didn't have weed problems anymore. And it was at that time that we thought, hell, we've actually learned something over the last 20 years that we've been able to do this. So once you start a process of stop the attitude and the physical killing of things, balance starts to come back into a system. Next slide, please. So this is our farm. We have. It's a funny thing. In a way we want to control nature, and so all those little numbers there represent paddocks. We've got about 220 or 30 paddocks. That gives us control about where the animals are at any particular time, and it gives us control, more importantly, of where they're not. So rest in our system is really important to allow plants and then the biology to do things differently. If animals are on a particular piece of ground all the time, you will get that ground doing exactly the same thing all the time. The definition of insanity, repeat the same thing, expecting a different answer. So what we're trying to do is create a system which sort of matches what happens in nature. It's a bit of chaos. Things happen. There's a lady called Nicole Masters, an absolute whiz in soils, and she says, keep your grass guessing. So the animals are going to different parts on the farm to do different jobs at any particular time. That's how we grow soil. We grow soil with our animals. Next slide, please. We now grow a few eggs, and we had to get a loan to start this enterprise. Went to the bank, he gave us the money. So the first time we got a pallet of eggs, or nearly a pallet of eggs, I sent him a photo. So that's what that was. Next photo, please. So here's an example of some cows who've just come into a new paddock. So they've got, that paddock probably hadn't been grazed for 3 months. They come in now, they're there for perhaps 3 days, then they're gone again. So that gives the opportunity for the soil to not so much rebuild, but to relax. If you get trodden on all the time, physically or mentally, you withdraw. I think the soils are a bit the same. If we are asking them to give all the time, they withdraw. So we go in there and we put a lot of energy in, and those cattle and the sheep that we run provide a lot of energy in their manure. So huge amounts of biology coming out in their manure, but also their saliva, the feet, just the general impact of being there, and then they go again, and all of that energy is allowed to do its thing. Next slide, please. Diversity. So when you're grazing, if you graze the same way all the time, you will get the same plants. So the way we try to graze promotes a system where you get a diversity of plants. And so this was a new pasture that we planted, but every 7 years we don't graze, or 7 or 8 years, we just don't graze the plants at all. They go for a year without any grazing. So that allows plants that are really palatable, that get eaten preferentially, to grow seed, do their thing. Next slide. Australian soils are really depleted in nutrients. If you get the soil working really well, a lot of those problems do go away. But that little thing I'm towing around behind the motorbike is a medicator, if you like, for the animals. They can come to that and choose the minerals that they want. They don't have to have them, but if they want them, they can get them. Next slide. Mental health. Dogs are really good for mental health. Little kids and dogs are really good for mental health. Next slide. This is to remind me that I need to do more of it. That's not me, that's our son Mackenzie. But we do get, and I in particular, get really wound up in what we're doing, and so we're physically stressed, we're mentally stressed. Mackenzie is a great example on a water ski of he just does it. You know, he's not thinking about it, he's just doing it. Next slide. For a while we ran pigs, because we thought that'd be a good idea. It was a really lovely experience, but it also added diversity to our system. So if we just ran cattle, that's just one species. If we run sheep, we've doubled the diversity. If we run pigs as well, the diversity increases again. So as Jake said before, each one of these animals has another whole layer of diversity within it and on it. Next slide. Just some sheep. Next one. Just pretty photos. So this is some pasture that the animals brought in. That little thing on the left-hand side was also another medicator for the animals. medicate is probably the wrong word, but an opportunity for them to select some minerals. Next one. So this was this morning. And the reason I wanted to show this, we do get really paranoid sometimes about chemicals. And I did go through a stage where we really didn't have anything on the farm. But chemicals are a tool. And if used well, they are a tool of great benefit. If you have a headache and you take some Panadol, it's a chemical, but it makes you feel better, you get on with your life, and but if you use it all the time just because, then it's a drug, and it's not actually helping. So on the left-hand side is a pasture that has come to the end of the season and it's drying off. On the right-hand side, we sprayed the pasture that was in there in August, and we planted species in there that would grow into the summer. So now we have not just a diversity of plants that are different than we would have grown before, but we have an ecosystem that has green living plants now when the rest of the farm's dying. So it becomes these little islands of refuge, as well as having feed. And I'm getting the wind up. And next one, family is important. And Julianne is has been very supportive, very supportive. Next one. This was a bit earlier this year. These cows, we've had a really good spring. The last few years have been pretty ordinary, and it was just really exciting to be able to go out into paddock when you shifted the cows and they're up to their knees in feed, and they look good, and you think, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Next one. With the chickens, we use a couple of guard dogs to keep the wedge-tailed eagles off them and the foxes. Next one. Part of what we do is share what we've learned. So we have workshops, field days, and this was one where we were talking about soil. The first thing we do when we go to have these workshops is we go out into the paddock with a shovel and we dig it up, we explore the roots, we explore what we can see. There's an awful lot we can't see, but we explore what we can. Next one. The left-hand side's where the cattle have just come out of a paddock, and the right-hand side where they've gone in. So it looks like they've made a mess of it, but within a week or two, or no, within about 3 or 4 days at this time of the year, which was a month ago, all the manure's gone, it's been recycled, it's back into the soil, the plants have lifted again. Next one. Having big mobs of animals in small areas for short time has great energy impact. That's all about the energy. Next one. As part of my journey through mental health rebuilding, a lady worked with me and got me into art therapy. And I had 2 or 3 years where I drew, and sometimes I drew 4 or 5 times a day. And this was just a way of helping me to cope at the time, but also helped in that healing. Next one, and that's our family. A few years ago when we all looked a little bit younger. Next one, if there is one. No, that's it.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Julianne, for feeding us and thinking deeply about how we can keep ourselves nourished. Before we go to Laura, who will take us on a wondrous world into beauty and enchantment, I know Laura's work really well, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Laura. What I'd like you to do is just turn to the Okay, so we might just come back to hear from Laura Wills, an artist and radical collaborator and in service to so much of what we're talking about tonight. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Trish. Can everyone hear me okay? I have a great job tonight of using my words really well. So when I did my first year of art school and took the next year off to travel around Tasmania on my bicycle and woofed on organic farms for a year. When I was at art school, my part-time job was at Wilson's Organic Store. So connected into food and what I eat and why it matters as a young adult. And when I did my honours in 2011, it was the same year that I did my permaculture certificate at the Food Forest up in Gawler, and I used permaculture as a research methodology for my studies, and was looking into food security and made a cart that was called Let Us Have Time, THYME, where you could harvest some wheatgrass which was grown on the cart and put it through the hand juicer and drink it then. And there were little windowsill agriculture projects where mini farms were grown in your pocket, or in almost like in framed artworks on the wall. Instead of it being a drawing, it's like a mini, like growing sprouts, as you can do on the kitchen sink. And following on from those explorations, we've been a food hub for Village Greens, and know Nat and Jess very well, who are at the helm of that, and we're really in and amongst all of these conversations, it's really exciting and it's really devastating. There's this dichotomy of feelings and ways of being, and whilst I don't want to dwell in the negativity, like Nat and Jess couldn't have their livelihood by being regenerative farmers in today, and that is really terrible. So that's sort of, it goes alongside. So one of the things that I did in 2017 was a drawing series celebrating women who grow food. And that was a series of drawings drawn into maps. I like to use maps in my practice. And I like to draw portraits of plants, and have drawn and celebrated plants that have grown in certain community gardens and things like that. More recently, I've been working with an academic, Joshua Zunut from University of New South Wales, who drove around Australia in a van taking aerial photographs of industrial agriculture. And he has a website called foodlandscapes.com.au where the hamburger splits up and you can click on the tomato or the cheese or the beef, and you can see the aerial footage of the farm and the land of where that is grown. And he got me on to sort of illustrate and try and share some of his findings, which, as you can imagine, are a little bit dark. And he's doing some future food projected scenarios, and of the 4, 1 of them's positive and 3 of them are pretty doom and gloom. But I guess, he's been working in this space for a while, and he's like, how do we get traction? What do we do? And I don't know the answers to those things, but it's like, these things that are not so good that are happening, we need to shift away from those things. So how can we do those kinds of things? And I guess that's where the arts can come in and make those shifts and work with people and try and talk about those ideas and collaboration and things like that. So I guess that's where I see my work come in, where we can work together and share the stories of place and get excited about diversity and eating food together, and sharing all this amazing research that's happening. I think that's all.
Would you like to tell us a bit about the workshops that you ran as part of this project And I think also knowing a little bit about the project you were doing up at Gawler, it's related to shifting mindsets, and so perhaps that would be interesting to hear about as well.
So Anna-Marie Brookman was like, Laura, come and do a food project up in Gawler, because Will and I had made a giant earthworm out of cardboard for the Australian Permaculture Convergence up at Mount Barker a couple of years ago. And you could open the head of the sculpture and there was a living worm farm inside. So the scraps from the conference could be fed into the worm farm and the worm could grow. People could collaborate and make it grow longer. You could draw into it as well. So there were different layers to get involved. So Anna-Marie and Kathy Witter from the Environment Centre up that way and I worked together for a couple of years to get some funding together, and we ended up getting some support from the Landscape Board. And it was a project about the beautiful Gudlapari Gawler River and the confluence of the three rivers, the North and South Para River, just in the middle of Gawler. So I've done a lot of artwork down this way. I love Salvia House. I love like the river down here, and when it goes out to sea, it's my favourite place. And it was really nice to get to know a little bit of the North. And one of the things that I did in the research was to walk from the food forest along the waterway, which is an ephemeral river, into Gawler, which was about 6 kilometres. And it was like this deep organic tunnel. That was back in autumn as part of the research. But just thinking about water, which is obviously connected to soil and food and things like that, the project involved working with the local community, doing 2 week-long artists in school residencies and working with the youth centre and doing some creative workshops and then sharing the work with community for a couple of public events. We had an immersive river walk, which was part of Nature Festival, and also a fancier food event when we collaborated with Kane Pollard, who some of you may know, who's a fabulous chef, and that was at the Food Forest. And part of the Artist in Residency program involved the kids having an excursion to the river. And a lot of those kids hadn't been there before, talking about connection and immersion and things that kids, it's great to share with them. Just going to their local place and connecting with the water was something that they hadn't done, even though it was across the road from their school. And then also we had an excursion to the food forest, which was a really great experience for them, and creating artwork outside together. And the artwork might have been ephemeral or sharing stories or something that's short term. It's not necessarily something always for a wall. Yes, so that was the Rivers Meeting project, and I can't remember the link to this work, but I live opposite a book mart in Tusmore, and every week there's a whole skip of books being thrown away, and I asked them to just drop the food recipe books on my doorstep, and they became the material for the community workshops that we run at Seaford Library and Wakefield House, which is a positive ageing centre. And there's a full-time chef that works at Wakefield House, and they have healthy meals available every day for people. It's a great place. It was really awesome to visit there and see the programs that they run. And the workshops that we did were emotional emojis. So using these images of food to think about food and how we feel and those kinds of things. And I'm in the middle of reading Jake's book, Invisible Friends, at the moment, and really enjoyed thinking about the body as an ecosystem, and that was the inspiration behind the drawing on the right, which used National Geographic photographs and collaged ecosystem and pictures of nature together into a body shape to talk about what's inside our body. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to all of you. So here we all are, grappling with the complexity of all things, having inherited over thousands of years of extractive thinking into what we now are, systems that we're all really complicit in but also to varying degrees beneficiaries of. We know that we need to transition into different ways of doing, being, working, and what I'd like to ask you first up, and I'd like to invite all of you to please ask some questions, is these systems are complex, and while we are tempted, I am tempted every 10 minutes to collapse into the prophecy of doom, and then I come out and I'm in the prophecy of hope. So as we grapple with this discombobulation, what Laura's alluding to, these polarised points of despair and hope, what are the signals of hope that you're seeing in your field? And Liz, I might start with you, if possible, because you're all signals of hope. And when I am involved in projects like this and meeting the incredible people that are involved in this, and Lisa Farrant, you've been wonderful in pulling this together. Carly Snoswell was also really helpful, and Paul, just taking this on with such gusto, and also our other partners here, where we have the Community Health Onkaparinga, thank you, and Healthy Cities Onkaparinga, and the Onkaparinga Food Collective, Fruit Share Adelaide. This is a room full of people that care about this. So we are the signals in ourselves, I guess. But yeah, I'd really like to know, Liz, what are the signals of change that you're seeing that give you hope?
I think it comes down to community and that deep connection we have to connecting with each other. And I'm seeing some great things happening across this region. And we're actually, just a slight pitch, we're putting together a local food documentary of the Fluorio food stories. And through that process, we've, heard lots of amazing things that people are doing in a very tricky time. But I think the hope is through what we can do together. And it's that word of collaboration, connection. And I was just saying to Jake, actually, one of the things I took away from what he was talking about was that word relational. And I talk deeply about it. All the work that we do is deeply relational, but I hadn't kind of thought about the microbes and all the deeply relational work in that space. So, yeah.
Thank you. Who's got a question? Please. The biome's relationship with the metabolism in the body.
Does the biome trigger the metabolism to work better and more efficiently?
Oh, right, okay. Well, the microbiome is kind of part of metabolism. So a lot of the microbes that live in your body actually metabolize the foods that you eat, again. So it's kind of like you are feeding your microbes in a way. So there are lots of things that you can't digest just naturally as your individual self, as a solo organism, if you like. That's why we need this community of life inside us. So some of those different species are responsible for chewing down and breaking down the food that you eat and releasing certain chemicals that are really important for things like allowing our own cells to communicate with each other, and providing, some of the micronutrients that we need to thrive and survive. So the microorganisms are kind of part of that metabolic process, I suppose. You might want to add any more to that? No, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Are all multicellular creatures holobionts? Is that what you said? Yes, I would say so, yeah. So every multicellular organism that has other tiny things living in a close association with it, we would consider as a holobiont. There are kind of various levels to the holobiont. So some people would be more purist about it and say that there's a kind of co-evolutionary relationship going on, so we kind of evolve as a community of life, where some people just consider it as the host plus those associated organisms that kind of work symbiotically to influence each other. Again, it's that relational piece. There's lots of relationships going on inside your body between those microorganisms, but also between yourself and those organisms. So yeah, all plants, all fungi, all birds, rats, snakes, they're all holobionts.
Great question, thank you. Who else has got a question?
Wanted to
Yeah, most of the species. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you all think that we can care for our soils in Australia and look towards cultural restoration
Nice.
for the care of each other, the plants, the animals, for the waterways? Given that we're heading towards a food shortage as well, without healthy soils.
Yeah. Maybe I should let someone else first answer, and then I can maybe.
Thanks, Lara. I think it's really exciting to think about people that are taking the courage to do things differently, and I think that's a great place to focus our attention on, and to help. And like thinking from that, I also think about who's not in this room right now, and I love that I'm thinking about that because of the unlearning that I've been trying to do in the last however many years of my practice. And I think that's really important. And within that unlearning or trying to do things differently, and that courage is also like trying to have fun or enjoy what we do together. But yeah, that was just my little addition.
Thanks, Laura. Ben?
Don't worry that there's not enough food. 50% of the food that is produced is wasted. Now, there is no food shortage. There is a shortage of really good quality food, perhaps, but there is no food shortage.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in nutrient-dense food for myself and my family.
Yeah. So we all make choices every day about how we spend our money. 40 years ago, food represented something like 25 or 30% of our income. On average now, it's, 15% or 14% or something. Food has become cheaper, but our dollar we believe that our dollar has to go further, because we want more and more money for things that we want to do rather than the basic necessities of life. 3 minutes without air, you're dead. 30 days without water, or less. It's probably 3 days without water, you're dead. 30 days without food, you're dead. These are things that are important, but they've become so easily attained by most of us that we take it for granted. And I think this is where we have to make a change. And we're fighting against the big dollars of the world, the multinational companies that spend enormous amounts of money convincing us that we need what they are providing. Whether it's a new mobile phone or, whatever it is, junk food. There's enormous amounts of money spent on making sure that it tastes just right so that we have to have it. How do we change that? We have to do it one at a time. Governments will not change. Change comes from individuals. Revolutions were started by 1 or 2 people, not by governments. So we can't say the government needs to do it or the somebody. It's up to each one of us. So if each one of us has an influence on our own family and then our little community, and we can just expand that, I think that's how we make change.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Liz, have you got something to say about that?
All I would add to that, and I think it's been said already, is just how critical our soil is for nutrient-dense food. Unless we're looking after our soil and caring for our soil deeply and understanding, I think it's about that deep understanding. I think, as I mentioned too, there's a lot happening in the nutrient density space. There's, I'm trying to think, the Bionutrient Association, who's come out of the States. Dan Kittredge is doing a lot in this area. And as you know, he's developing these scanners that are going to, and his thought is that once we've got a scanner where we can scan the nutrient density of a carrot, this is then going to start to shift, hopefully, economics around, because people were then going to start to vote more and more with their dollar when they can see actually say, I've had lots of arguments with mums actually, are you sure, Liz, that the Village Greens food would actually be more nutrient dense? I can't guarantee, but I'm pretty sure. But until people get that actual really hard data, I then think so I think it will change. I think there's going to be a lot of movement in the next few years. But yeah, the soils are so critical.
This is a really beautiful question. Jake, have you got something to add?
That's been covered. Pretty comprehensive. I don't know, I guess to spread the word more that the soil is an ecosystem, that we need this kind of paradigm shift in thinking. We have the technology now to, as I was saying to Liz earlier about, sorry, it is Liz, isn't it? Phew. We have the technology and it's kind of sensory expanding now, so we can actually understand a completely different domain of life that we've never really had opportunity to, and understand the importance of that for the health of that soil ecosystem and our own health. So it's kind of just spreading the word more, getting it out there that soil's not this inert material and that we should be understanding it and caring for it. There's a kind of 3-step process when we're restoring soils in restoration ecology, and before we start thinking about the biology that exists that provides all the plants with their healthy nutrients, etc. You kind of need to create the conditions for the biology to thrive in the first place, and it's physical components and then the chemical components before the biological components. It's a bit technical that, but I mean, if you're really into it, you could start understanding the science behind it and doing phys-chem analysis of the soil to see what their legacy effects are in the soil and why that's preventing those biological dynamics from progressing. So that's just a bit more of the science involved, but yeah.
Thank you. We should pause to actually ask each other how might we care better for our soils and make it cultural. Because I think I think Bill Gammage, his book, The Greatest Estate on Earth, in one of the opening passages spoke about how First Nations peoples work on country in fear of their spirit. And there's this shift that each of you have alluded to tonight in different ways around this shift in mindset where we embody deeply, without choice, service to place and have a life-centric perspective and shift away from this industry-centric perspective. And Ben, did you have something else you'd like to say as well? And I might grab that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things we need to think about. Yes, it would be lovely to get a nutrient-dense carrot every time and an apple and whatever, but if you go and eat an apple and a carrot as opposed to the chocolate bar which has got a whole lot, or anything processed that's got a whole lot of stuff on the back that your grandmother wouldn't recognise the name of, you're going to be better off anyway. So if you stress too much about the carrot not being good enough, you're going to upset your gut.
Totally. Okay, why don't we, before Jackie, thank you, before we take Jackie's question, why don't we just pause again, turn to the person next to you and have a couple of minutes conversation about how might we care for our soil? And make it personal. How might you care for your soil? Q&A. And Jackie, you've got a question for us. What's your question? Okay. Thank you for the reminder. Tomorrow's International World Soil Day. Wonderful, thank you. That sounds so fascinating. Okay, who's got another question? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Deer Village Greens are no longer operating, but as Laura alluded to, 10 years they were done at Aldinga. Amazing, small-scale farmers doing incredible work, but sadly that was, they just, were not getting a living wage, which is part of the issue that I alluded to as well, and Laura has as well. It's really critical that we value our farmers. However, the good news with that, it is still being used and it's a farm. So Carrie Knott, who I had a picture of before, is running Common Acre there now, so which is a community-supported agricultural model, so slightly different from the Village Greens model, where you can subscribe. So it's about putting money up front to support the farmer through those seasons, and then you get the box. It's over, I think, a 12 to 13 week period at a time, or you can also find her produce at Bulk Cellar in Aldinga, which is a local little shop there in the Eco Village. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Zoe.
I'm a little bit biased towards soil, but I know a lot of people, there's movements in like hydroponics and stuff. I don't know who this is directed towards, but how does hydroponics fit the gut microbiome in relation to soil? Are we thinking it's good? I don't know, is there like good, bad, the ugly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer, or I don't know the research. There might be some out there. It's not something that I've looked at. But I mean, I assume there'd be less of a diverse edible microbiome in some of these organisms. I don't know the answer though. That's just an assumption, speculation really. But it's a good question. Anyone else have any insights?
Let's assume that we don't know everything, just for starters. So if a plant's growing in the ground, there'll be a whole lot of stuff it's exposed to that we do know about, but there's probably 10 times as much that we don't know about. So not only is there that nutrition might be coming through, but there's the energy from the earth that you're getting from the plant. You put it in a hydroponic setup where the plant gets fed what you've decided that you want to feed it, which will be the things that give it the greatest amount of return for the cheapest amount of money, and it's probably not going to be very balanced.
Great question, Zoe.
Yeah, good question.
PhD right there. Terrific. Any other questions? And then I'm going to come to the panel for you to ask each other questions, just to put you on the spot. Okay, so who's got a question?
Okay. Can you tell me more about resistant starches?
Okay. Oh, only a little bit. Not my big field these days. As I said, they're found in cooled potato, cooled pasta. Really important fibre that is often not thought about. And I know that CSIRO and the likes have got into how can we actually make these products, or make. I think they've been looking at a barley actually, and making changing the DNA in that to incorporate more resistant starch. So it's one of those really I think critical fibres, and the whole mix of fibres that do really good things to certain types of microbes. And I couldn't tell you which microbe, but just have lots of potato salad. Or cold potato chips even, if you like cold potato chips. Yeah.
It has to be cold.
It has to be cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So in, I think it was New South Wales, there was a project, an artist, a scientist and a farmer walks into a bar. And
is it Candace?
Candace, yeah. And my question is to this local community and to Florio, would there be scope for artists to collaborate with farmers and scientists to talk about these issues and share them more broadly?
Great question.
So the question is, can you repeat the question, Laura?
Well, is there scope or interest, which is probably a bit of a simple question.
Who's interested?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Terrific. And I just also want to shout out to Paul, who's made this possible, because the project started, this Gut Feelings project started with an exhibition by Jake Holmes, the artist Jake Holmes, who, has someone got a toilet roll you can show me? So on your seats you've been given a gift, and it's a toilet roll with a wrap that says, "Mind your gut, you are what your microbes eat." A wonderful saying, Jake, you've shared that with us. And did you know your biome and mental health are deeply connected? A healthy gut supports a healthy mind. So please take one of these home. If there's a spare one, take a spare one and give it to someone and have a conversation about minding your gut. The images that you see that are very faint on this wrap are by an artist called Jake Holmes, who's done an exhibition of work at Flinders Medical Centre along level 2 of the promenade, and it was through that work that we were able to connect with Paul and Paul's team, who have worked really hard and really quickly, and especially over the last few months, Lisa, you've pulled this together so beautifully with the workshops and this forum. So just a shout out to Jake there. So your question again was, I think Ben was about to respond to that. Do you need to repeat the question again, Ben? Have I taken you off?
No, I'll just make it up.
Okay.
I think that anything that brings different interests together creates diversity. And that helps to keep our minds open. So it's a good thing. Good thing.
Diversity. Radical diversity. Beautiful. Okay, we might start to close up. So are there any other questions? If not, I will ask each of our wonderful panellists to just give us a take-home message or a thought that's come up for you or something you'd like to leave our audience with.
Don't lose hope. If Mother Nature wanted to get rid of us, she would have done it a long time ago. Way more powerful than we'll ever be. And you just have to think of the devastation of a flood or a cyclone or an earthquake. Now, she's only doing that in small areas. But if she was really serious about getting rid of us, I reckon it'd be easy.
Okay. Do you want to go? I think maybe just the next time you look at a plant, don't look at it as an individual entity. Look at it as, imagine that you've got those microscope spectacles on, and imagine it as a community of life in itself. And when you're using this toilet roll, think of the same as yourself as well, as a community of life.
And think about where your foods come from. Think deeply about that, and I guess from tonight, have those conversations with other people around thinking about where your food comes. Bearing in mind that not all of us have the same level of choice, so I'm very aware of that, but whatever we can do to be thinking about those people that are behind our food and how that food is growing.
One of the things that I think came up for me was gratitude. And I've done a few mindfulness retreats, and one of the things that you do there is say thank you for your food before you eat it. And I don't always do that, but when I do, it feels good. And I think it helps with everything in lots of different levels, including even the way that your body digests it, because you're chewing it in a more relaxed way. So I think that's a really simple thing to do. And the other thing is what's in season, and at the moment the white chartreuse mulberry tree at our place is in season.
Wonderful. Okay, any other final comments? No? Okay. Please thank our wonderful panellists. Not just for their presentations tonight, but for their service in futures worthy of the best of us, as Joanna Macy would say. Thank you for coming, thank you for staying. Please enjoy the wonderful food by Gut Feeling, which I only learnt yesterday was actually a company that focuses entirely on healthy probiotic and prebiotic food. So please help yourselves. Please take in the wonderful information that our support team have brought along, and we look forward to any other conversations. And throw the bugs back. Yeah.